ourselves a bit more nowadays?
I think we could. I mean, I think we could. And partly, I think, and this is encouraged by social media, I suspect. I don't think it's caused, but it's encouraged by social media. That there are a kind of narrowing range of options for how you react to something, you know. So it's outrage. This is absolutely outrageous. Well, actually, sometimes it's just a bit silly. You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes you ought to, I think that feminism has a bit, and this is a hopelessly wild generalisation, but feminism has a bit lost its capacity to laugh at men. You know, it's got terribly angry. And, you know, there's a place for anger, you know, but also there's a place for saying, you know, you silly boys, you know, stop it.
What makes you laugh, though, just in a natural kind of way? What makes you laugh?
Oh, I just think the absurdity of everyday life, really.
Yeah.
Like being told on your sat-nav to go to the next roundabout. So you then do think, this is quite funny, but what happens if my phone battery goes? You know, I've only got so much, and I've got to get to Ramsey Court. And I won't even be able to ring and say I'm lost.
No, but isn't it, it's interesting because, you know, when I think about my own situation and I remember growing up not being able to use a phone because you couldn't hear on the phone. So it meant that I had to write a letter to my parents, you know, when I was a student. And then if I wanted to call them, there had to be someone else to make that call. Or you had to ask someone for directions and things like that. And I mean, when we think about the things that we used to do that were just so natural to do, you know, get out of our car and ask someone.
Somebody, yes, that's right. Yes.
And somehow we feel, we can't possibly do that because we might be giving the wrong kind of suggestion or something.
I remember, I wasn't there, but my husband was we were living temporarily in California near San Francisco. And my husband and our son, who was then about 12, decided they'd go on a bit of a road trip into the mountains. And they were coming back, and the sat-nav ceased to work for some reason. I don't know why. And my husband Robin said that our son got really anxious because he said, how are we going to get back to San Francisco? And he said, well, there's many ways. One, we can look at signposts. They mostly say San Francisco. Or we could ask somebody.
Yes.
This kid was so completely wedded to the sat-nav.
Yeah, it's true.
That he didn't, he just thought, if your sat-nav ceased to work...
Yes, the whole world comes to an end. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I mean, you are pretty active on social media and...
For better or worse.
Better or worse, yeah. And I mean, has this been something that you've embraced? Have you found that you're hostage to it, or did you find that you had to embrace it in order to move forward, or is it a natural extension of you?
I got onto it, and I only do Twitter, really. You know, I have a Facebook account and I have an Instagram account, but I don't look at them.
Yep. So why Twitter then?
Totally straightforwardly, I think that I work part-time for the Times Literary Supplement. And when Twitter started, it was a very journalistic medium. And we were all told to get Twitter accounts so that when we'd written a review or got a particularly good review in, we would use it for advertising. You know, we'd say, read the TLS this week because there's this in it. And I thought this was a bit silly, really. But, you know, this isn't going to last, I thought. But I was a good girl and I got one.
Yeah.
And it was when you only had 140 characters, not 280.
Yes.
So it was really in the old days. But it's... I kind of think that I've gained more than I've lost from it. Because it's now the medium when, well, just in my absolutely professional field, if somebody hears about a new discovery of something somewhere, it goes on Twitter.
Yeah.
You know? And, you used to go to conferences and find out all the gossip about what was happening and who'd found what. Now it's on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I got into it because it was telling me all sorts of things that were really useful.
Sure. Are you still a book person though? Do you like to open a book?
Oh yes.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I don't like reading on Kindle or on my iPad. I just don't like the. I'm sure it's partly because I haven't mastered it yet. So that I want to pick up a book and I want to be able to flip through it and delve into it a bit.
Yep.
Maybe there is a way of doing that.
It's a texture of a book.
Yeah.
The weight of a book.
And I do sometimes read, in the bath, for example. Don't very often have a bath. I usually have a shower, but sometimes very nice.
Yep.
I can't imagine getting into the bath with my iPad. You kind of worry that you drop it.
Yeah.
If you drop a book into the bath, well, so be it. But no iPad.
But with the internet and the research that you do, do you find that this has been an advantage for you, or do you find that there's an awful lot of inaccuracies out there? Do you have to sift through, almost like a sieve, the information?
I think it's. All these cakes are brilliant.
You're munching away there.
Munching away.
Yeah.
I think it's. What it reminds me of is when I was at school, and it was just the very beginning of calculators.
Oh, yes.
You can imagine
I
a
remember.
long time ago. And we were told that you should never use a calculator to do a sum unless you had a rough idea of what the answer was. Because otherwise you'd have pressed, an extra naught and it would be absolutely disastrous. Yeah. And to some extent, research on the internet's a bit like that.
That's interesting.
That you kind of have to... You have to sort of know what it is that you're going to find before you start, otherwise it's baffling.
But how can that be translated then for younger people?
I don't know. I don't know. And I find, oddly, that my students who are, digital natives are in some ways less good at finding things on the internet than I am.
Ah, how interesting.
Because and I was talking to a colleague about this, he says that students will always come in and say, oh, I can't find that. I've looked on, I've Googled it and I can't find it. And almost always you do. You kind of say, look, I bet I can. Mm-hmm. And we came to the conclusion it was because they didn't really know what it was they were looking for.
Do you think it's that, or do you think it's the they need the answer now? It's perhaps the reluctance to keep digging.
I think perhaps it's lack of perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a lot of people either tweet me or email me to say, dear Professor Beard, I wonder if you could help. We're wanting to know when Euripides died. And my first instinct is to think, oh, for crying out loud, I'm going to Google it. You could have done that.
Yes,
So why are you asking me? And I've come to the conclusion there's two reasons. That one is actually they want that information from a source of authority. Mm-hmm. They want someone who they trust to tell them what the answer is. Mm-hmm. But I also think that, I just think, I'm just going to go to the wiki page for Euripides and it'll tell me when he died. I don't carry that around my head. Yeah. But when everything about that character, Euripides, say, is strange to you, you do have this kind of sense that you don't know how to sift the information. You don't know, if it's on wiki, is that true? I know that, what would look barking mad, you know, which is Euripides died in 1927, I'd think, no, he didn't.
Yeah.
But if you have no framework in which to put it,
Sure.
the internet is just baffling.
And I mean, it's interesting because I find on a slightly different level, we sometimes get messages from young percussion players who will ask, well, how do you set your instruments? How do you position your instruments for a certain piece of music? Now, the setup is completely personal to your height, to your arm stretch, to how you hear and listen to the sound, how you want the setup to be orchestrated, and all sorts of things, where on the platform you want your instruments to be positioned, etc., etc. So it's a very personal thing. And so we do normally say, well, look, please send us your suggested setup of instruments, and then we'll gladly make a comment, But it is this feeling that, well, because of the immediacy of the internet and how we communicate, that there's this almost expectancy to please just answer my question.
Yes,
which is interesting.
The thing that really annoys me.
Yeah.
Very,
you've got to finish eating, otherwise I won't be able to
very
live with you.
large mouthful of pain.
That slight pause here, and that's okay. You take your time. We don't want you having tummy digestion because you've eaten so fast.
I think that this is where I feel incredibly old. That I'm very pleased that the internet allows people to ask questions of people they wouldn't otherwise have really known how to contact or whatever. I'm pleased. Even if it is quite time consuming. I just wish they'd say thank you.
Yeah.
Even when it's a very simple question.
Yeah.
And you do have the feeling of they could have looked this up themselves. It takes you a bit of time to do it. I mean, there's no question which doesn't have a turnaround time of a minimum of 10 minutes, really.
Yeah, that's true.
And and you must get loads of them, each day. I get loads of them. And I try to, I sometimes miss them, I'm sure, but I try to answer. And when I don't get a thank you,
you're despondent.
I think, I put a lot of effort into that. I mean, it might only have been 10, 15 minutes.
Yep, but it all adds up.
But it adds up. And just occasionally, when they've come on email, I do write back and say, did you get my answer?
Yes, and that's another minute or two.
Because I just, mostly you just think,
Yep.
But just occasionally I think you have got to, if you say thank you, it makes a huge difference.
Well, you feel there's an opportunity to continue the conversation, actually, if that person does decide to come back and so on.
Yeah. Otherwise you're just becoming a human Google.
Yeah.
If you don't want to say thank you, then Google it.